Great, well, welcome everybody. I thought we would start this meeting so we could all see each other's face during introductions, and then we'll jump into what we wanted to chat with you about. My name is Kristen Byrne. I am a consultant working with SANDAG on the Central Mobility Hub and the Central Mobility Hub and Connections Consolidated, I'm going to get this wrong, Consolidated Multimodal Corridor Plan. So a mouthful. I thought we'd start out just by everybody doing introductions, and to avoid us all talking over one another, I'll call on you, you can introduce, and then I'll just keep calling on people till we are all done, and then we'll get going with the presentation. So Gia, why don't you start?
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are very excited to have this conversation with each of you. My name is Gia Balish. I'm part of the communication team at SANDAG. Many of you have already connected with me. I know I've been kind of making the rounds to speak about the Central Mobility Hub project. That's my cat, sorry. So, hopefully this conversation will take us a little bit further and go into more about those comprehensive multimodal corridor plans. And, we're really looking forward to hearing from all of you.
Great. Sharon?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sharon Humphreys, and I am the project manager for the Central Mobility Hub. And I am really looking forward to hearing all of your thoughts this evening. Thank you.
Great. And by the way, I'm not calling these names in any particular order. It's just the order that you are on the participants list. So Alejandra? I think you might be muted, Alejandra. No?
There it is. I'm Alejandra Mogilner. I'm with Paul Chase, and we are part of the Old Town planning.
Great, welcome. Okay, Andrea, I'm sorry.
No, thank you for remembering. I'm Andrea Schlagner. I'm chair of the Ocean Beach Planning Board.
Andy.
Good evening, Andy Hanshaw, with Executive Director with the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition and chair of the City of San Diego's Mobility Board.
Great. Angelique?
Hi, everyone. Angelique Kalanog, Policy Manager for Circulate San Diego.
And Abigail?
Hi, this is Abigail with HNTB.
Great. Brad?
I'm the second vice chair and the representative for the Peninsula Community Planning Board.
Bree?
Hi, everyone. I'm Bree Robertoy. I'm another outreach consultant on this project, and along with Kristen, I'll be helping to manage community outreach for the project.
Great. Brer, did I pronounce that correctly?
Unmute, sorry. Hi, I'm Brer Marsh. I'm the representative from Uptown Planners. I'm an architect with Architects Moser Drew and the president of Bike SD.
Great. Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Kenton. I'm the chair of the Midway Pacific Highway Community Planning Group.
Colleen.
Good evening. I'm Colleen Clemenson. I'm the Director of Regional Planning at SANDAG, overseeing work on our transformational transportation plan. I'm also overseeing work on the comprehensive multimodal strategies, the CMCPs that we're talking about tonight. And also pleased to be seated at the table with the Community Advisory Committee for the sports arena. I see some of my fellow committee members here tonight. Yes, Kathy's one of them, and Jessica organizes all of us. So great to be with you all tonight.
Great. Daniela.
Hi, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. I'm an account executive representing Southwest Strategies, and we are also a sub-consultant on the Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan project.
Great. DK?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is DK Anil. I'm the vice chair of the Midway Community Planning Group, and I also work at the Regional Chamber of Commerce on the public policy team. So very familiar with all of this. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Greg.
My name is Greg Geisen. I am the Naval project lead for Naval, 'Naval, 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 '
Hi, I'm Irene McCormick. I'm the Director for Strategic Communications at Sandag.
Jack.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jack Christensen. I'm here with the Sandag team, and so nice to see so many of you, and thanks for being with us tonight.
Jessica.
Good evening, Jessica Jones, Brookfield Properties, and I am focusing on all of the community engagement for the sports arena project. So it's nice to see some familiar faces and good to be here.
Josh.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Josh Coyne, Director of Community Engagement for Councilmember Campbell here in the city of San Diego. I am the Midway Community Representative, and I was the lead on Measure E in our office. Good to be with you all. Thanks for having me.
Great. Keith?
Hello, good evening. My name is Keith Greer. I'm one of the principals in the Regional Planning Department at Sandag, and I'll be serving as the manager for the environmental planning for this project.
Great, great. Linda? Linda, you're on mute.
Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. Linda Acuna, and I'm the chair for the Old Town Community Planning Group, and I'm also a board member of the Old Town Chamber of Commerce.
Great. Mike.
Hi, Mike Risabal with the consultant group IBI.
Great. Muska?
Good evening, I'm Muska Laik. I'm the Community Planning Liaison Officer for Naval Base Point Loma. Thank you, Sandag, for putting this together and including us in the conversation.
Captain Franklin.
Hey, thank you, Kristen. And as Muska said, thank you for everybody putting this together and allowing us to be part of the process. My name is Captain Kenneth Franklin, go by Ken, and been the Installation Commanding Officer for Naval Base Point Loma for just over 4 months now. So new to San Diego, new to the area, and new to the whole process. So I just asked to be patient with me as I'm still coming up to speed on the OTC revitalization. So thanks for having us.
Great. Nicola?
Good afternoon, Nicola Bernard. I'm with Project Manager with Caltrans for the Central Mobility Hub.
Rachel.
Hi, Rachel Kennedy. I'm the Corridor Planning Manager for Sandag and the Project Manager for the Central Mobility Hub and Connections Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan, and excited to be here with all of you tonight. Thank you.
Ryan.
Hi, my name is Ryan Kohut. I'm a Strategic Projects Director at Sandag, and I'm overseeing the overall Central Mobility Hub project.
And Steve.
Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Skiwala. I'm with IBI Group, and I'm the Consultant Project Manager for the Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan.
And Stephen.
Hi, I'm Stephen Cook with Chenner & Associates. We're working with IBI on the Central Mobility Hub. I also worked on the Midway Community Plan update, specifically on the mobility element.
Great. And Zach Adams.
Hey, Zach Adams, Vice President at Brookfield Properties. Really appreciate being invited here, and it's great to see so many friends and neighbors here. We're working with the city and the community on the sports arena site. Thanks for inviting.
And I think last but not least, Zach Hernandez.
Hi, Zach Hernandez, planning at Sandag, providing planning support for the Central Mobility Hub CMCP effort.
Great. Did I miss anybody? We have 32 participants, so a really great turnout tonight. So,
Angeli?
Oh, Angeli, did I not get you?
No, you got me.
Oh,
I think
okay.
you got me.
Don't, I forget like probably the first person who was on the list. All right, I am going to share my screen right now, and we have some presentations, some interactive activities, and we will just go ahead and get started. So just a few, we've all done a million Zoom meetings, so I'm sure you all know this, but just some virtual meeting guidelines. We are recording the meeting primarily to make sure that we capture all the input that we get and that we're accurate. I think everybody has typed their name in correctly. I think we all know this, but mute yourself if you can when you're not speaking, just to avoid background noise. And to be called on to speak when we get into discussion portions of the meeting, you can use the raise your hand function, and I'll be monitoring that. Gia will also be monitoring the chat box, so you could either type your name in there, or if you want to share a comment via the chat box, you can do that, and then Gia can read it, or if there's a question or something like that. So first thing we wanted to talk about is, why are we calling this meeting? I know a number of you have probably heard a presentation at one of your planning group meetings or one of your organization meetings about the Central Mobility Hub and the coordinated multimodal corridor plans. But we are just getting started, and that was an introduction. And what we wanted to do today was to bring the key leadership of the planning groups that are close by the two alternative sites for the Central Mobility Hub, and organizations that are involved in these kinds of topics. And what we want to do tonight is really to hear from you. We're going to be providing some information about the two projects just to make sure that we're all familiar with them. But we want to dedicate a lot of the meeting to listening to what you have to say, what you think are opportunities, what you think are concerns. And so we can use that information to help inform the planning process and make sure that SANDAG has all the information that they need. So our agenda, we're going to go through a brief Central Mobility Hub project overview, and then we want to turn it over to you. And for each of the organizations that's here tonight, we wanted you to give a 1 to 2 minute overview of what is happening in your communities or with your organizations, any planning efforts or development that we need to be aware of as these planning processes move forward. Then we will turn it over to get a presentation on the Central Mobility Hub and Connections Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. And then after that, we have some activities. You may see the little logo at the top right, Mentimeter. We're using a function there that does some like entities, which we'll get to in just a second. And then we will wrap up with next steps and talk about some of the public engagement opportunities. So I just mentioned Mentimeter, and we have a couple questions that we want you to use. So we would like you, and I have a little test question after this just to make sure everybody knows how to use it. You can either scan that QR code on your phone or go to menti.com and then type in that code. So I'll give everybody a second to do that. And what it should do is pull up on your phone. You should see this same slide. Okay, did everybody get that? Okay. So just to test it out, we thought we would start with a neutral question, or maybe it isn't. We could get into some arguments about these, but what is your favorite holiday movie? And then you'll see we get live results. All right, so we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Did everybody who wanted to participate yet? All right. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Colleen Clemenson, the Director of Regional Planning for SANDAG, to kick us off on our presentation.
Thank you, Kristen. We thought it would be really helpful if we really put this CMCP project in the context of the larger planning that's going on in the region. And just want to make sure you all are aware that SANDAG is working on a new transportation vision for the San Diego region, and a transportation vision that really provides a compelling option to driving. And this is an iconic image that gives the sense of high-speed transit throughout the region to all of our major destinations, and really converging in a central mobility hub, which is highlighted in this visual right near San Diego Bay. Next slide. We do these plans about every 4 years, and in past plans, what we've done is had a list of transportation projects that are envisioned between now and the year 2050, and we sort of refresh that list of projects by updating cost estimates, looking at demographic projections, trying to understand where our growth is going to occur, and then take that plan forward to our board and then send it on to the state. And with all the recent changes in legislation and the fact that the San Diego region is not meeting its greenhouse gas targets, which are a mandate by the state of California, we've taken a completely different approach with this planning effort, and it's been data driven. And at the core of it is really identifying where trips are being made in the region. And this is a basic sort of look at the data, and the figure on the left shows where people in the region live, and the darker the color, the higher the concentration of people. The figure on the right shows our employment centers in the region. And it's not just one employment center in downtown San Diego. In fact, our largest employment center is in the Sereno Mesa area adjacent to UCSD, and people are making trips to that location from all over the region. Next slide. What it really comes down to with the regional plan, and this also transcends into the work that we're doing on these comprehensive multimodal plans, we are solving for congestion, we're solving for social equity, and meeting our state and federal mandates. And it's these three things that come together and have to interact with one another for the plan to truly be successful. Next slide. So data, knowing what we're solving for, and then it's these 5 strategies that we have brought together to help develop the big picture plan. And they include complete corridors. So when we talk about a corridor, the very basics, it's kind of thinking about our highways. These are the backbone of our transportation system. How do we make the most of those? Make sure that they're multimodal. Consider all modes of transportation, goods movement, carpools, parallel transit, parallel bicycle and pedestrian improvements, and looking all the way down to what happens at our local streets and roads and how these serve one another. The second big move is transit leap. This is really taking transit to the next level, a big leap where transit is 80, 90, 100 miles an hour, so that it is truly competitive with driving, that it's just as fast or more convenient for you to hop in transit as opposed to driving your own vehicle. The third big move are the mobility hubs, and we envision about 30 of them throughout the region. Areas of activity where multiple transportation options are available, and the Central Mobility Hub is one that we're talking about tonight. Flexible fleets are the fourth big move. And this is really where technology is coming into play and can truly transform how we get around in our communities and to and from mobility hubs. The whole idea of flexible fleets is sizing the vehicle to the type of trip and the number of people who are taking that trip, and that these are clean and ultimately autonomous vehicles. So you really can think about this as being an e-bike, a scooter, onto Uber and Lyft rides, and again, clean vehicles being electric vehicles and ultimately being autonomous. And then the fifth big move is the operating system. This is the technology that helps make all of this work and maximizes all of our infrastructure investments so that we can make decisions by using our phone on what the best mode of transportation is, when we will get there, how much it's going to cost. We can pay for it. If we're going to drive, we can find out where we can even park. And bringing together signal timing and real-time information about what's happening on our roadway system. That's what the Next OS does to bring all of this together. So what does this look like in terms of a regional plan? Kristen will take us to the next slide. And this is the overall concept. So the bright green that's in the western third of the region, this is really looking at our highway system and deploying managed lanes on all of our highways. So if you think of what we have on Interstate 15, where we have lanes available for carpools and people who want to drive alone can utilize those facilities, transit can go in those facilities, that kind of a system throughout our highway network. The darker green lines, this is really about access for our rural communities, evacuation routes in particular, to make sure we have safe evacuation routes. The dark purple shows the high-speed transit. This would be subway lines, underground, above ground. This is the fast 80, 90, 100 mile an hour kind of transit we're talking about. Also making enhancements to our existing light rail system. I think all of us are excited to see the connection that is being made from Old Town San Diego up to UCSD. That will be a 1-seat ride in less than a year from the border up to UCSD. Other improvements to our bus system so that it really is available more on-demand type service. And then the pink areas you see here are the mobility hubs. And then one of the things we're most proud of, if you see the little airplane icon down there, is that the Central Mobility Hub would have a direct connection to the airport. So finally having a direct transit connection to our international airport. To show you a couple of images on the Central Mobility Hub, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sharon, who's working in more detail on this. This is really a vision for a multimodal hub. You have that right, Kristen? Yeah, a multimodal hub for the region, being a major destination. And there are various locations that this could occur, somewhere in central San Diego, near the airport and near downtown. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Sharon, to talk in more detail about where we are in the process and what's being envisioned for the Central Mobility Hub.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for meeting with us. We are really looking forward to talking with you about your thoughts and vision for this dynamic community. As Colleen was saying, the city of San Diego is one of the few major US cities that does not have an easy, efficient public transportation connection to the airport. The Central Mobility Hub vision is to provide that connection. The vision also includes identifying traffic flow improvements to reduce congestion. Another important goal is to provide better access to the Central Mobility Hub for bicycles and pedestrians. And finally, the goal is to create a safe, clean, and inviting space for the community to gather. General features of the Central Mobility Hub are expected to include connections to Amtrak, Coaster, and the trolley, provisions for future high-speed rail and light rail connections, an automated people mover to the airport, bus bays, pickup drop-off areas for taxis, shuttles, autos, easy active transportation access and amenities for bicycles and pedestrians. And as this is a connection to the airport, we are anticipating incorporating provisions for passenger ticketing and waiting areas and airport ticketing, baggage and security facilities. With the introduction of COVID, the airport is having to do more and more health checks, and being able to do that remotely is going to be an added benefit for the airport. In addition, provisions for urban air mobility facilities for the future will be accommodated. What this will not include, however, is airport or transit parking facilities. The whole goal is to get people out of their cars and using public transportation and active transportation. So providing additional parking really kind of defeats that goal. So that is not going to be included. Next slide. Recognizing the need for a better public transportation connection to the airport, the Sandag board approved the creation of the Airport Connectivity Committee to develop alternatives to provide an improved connection to the airport. Out of that effort, 4 concepts were developed, and I will present those 4 concepts later in the presentation. About the same time this effort was occurring, the Navy issued a request for interest for a partner to work with the Navy to revitalize the Navy's Old Town campus site. This request introduced a unique opportunity to consider the Navy's Old Town campus site as an alternative site for the Central Mobility Hub. So this location is one of 2 sites Sandag is actively considering for the Central Mobility Hub. In addition, the airport, port, and city have also proposed improvements in the region, and Sandag signed a memorandum of understanding with these partner agencies to work collaboratively to address traffic congestion and airport access in the region. So this created a unique opportunity where all the stakeholders are working collaboratively in the area. And we're really excited about working with you, the community leaders, to develop a central mobility hub that will transform the area for the better. So as an engineer, I love to design and build things, but the planning efforts are just beginning for the comprehensive multimodal corridor plans. So I don't yet know where or what the central mobility hub will be, but I do know it will be exciting and it will be transformative for the community. So with that, I'll pass it back to Kristen. Oh, I'm sorry. I haven't gone through the alternatives yet. So as part of the airport connectivity concepts, there were 4 alternatives developed. The first concept is connecting the Navy's Old Town campus, putting the central mobility hub at the Navy's Old Town campus, and providing a direct tunnel connection to the front of the airport. The second concept also cites the central mobility hub at the Navy's Old Town campus, but it runs an above ground people mover around the end of the airport and to the front of the airport. Next slide. The third concept is to locate the central mobility hub at the Intermodal Transit Center. And this area is located between I-5 and Pacific Highway. And in this case, the above ground people mover would also go around the end of the airport to the front of the airport. Another alternative to provide that connection to the airport is a trolley extension. And that would come off of the trolley lines along right next to Laurel Street. So with this particular alternative, the central mobility hub could be located at either the Intermodal Transit Center, as shown in concept 3, or in the same location as the Navy's Old Town campus. So with that, we really need to allow the planning process to advance before we know what we're going to be moving forward with. But we will be looking at all of these alternatives through the environmental clearance process and ultimately into preliminary engineering. But that work is, in the very early stages and hasn't begun. So now I'm really going to pass it back to Kristen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, hope you found that informative, but now we want to hear from you, and we want to hear updates from each of you about things that you think Sandag needs to know about what's going on in your communities or what's going on with your organizations. And so we have a list here, so I'll just start right at the top and ask Josh Coyne if you have anything that you want to share with us from Council District 2 about priorities and things that Sandag should be considering.
Thanks for the opportunity, and I want to thanks to the Sandag team for organizing that update and refresher as well. I have the opportunity to connect with Sandag often, so I won't take up too much time today, but I do want to specifically flag just one issue that Colleen mentioned included in that triangle, which was the congestion issue. That's an issue that our constituents raise consistently for us in District 2. So I appreciate that is a focal point of the CMCP. I'll also say, interestingly, there's the redevelopment of the old post office site too that's down there that's adjacent to the area that we're talking about. And I know it's a private development, but I would just ensure that talking about development in that specific area that we include that in conversation as well. Outside of that, you've got all the right people on the line to share all the important updates that I know about. And I think that's all for me for right now.
Great, thank you, Josh. So Midway, Pacific Highway, Kathy or DK, do you guys want to share some things about your community?
Sure, happy to, Kristen. Hi, this is Kathy again. I think everybody's on this call is pretty well aware of the hub of activity or potential activity that we are excited to get started. Of course, there's the as Josh mentioned, there's the old Midway Post Office, which is undergoing redevelopment now, and is being handled pretty quietly, actually, because everything is that they're doing right now is by right and by entitlement. We've got the Naval, the Old Town campus redevelopment process going on, and excited for that major redevelopment opportunity and how that's going to impact the community. And then, of course, we've got the sports arena redevelopment process that has begun. Last month, we eliminated the 30-foot height limit. Potentially, we're awaiting the outcome of some litigation that hopefully will go our way. But so in general, we're very excited. I mean, we don't really feel like the bulldozers are lining up and waiting to start this week. But there's a tremendous amount of revitalization and activity and interest in the Midway community.
Great, thank you, Kathy. That's all very helpful. So next, let's move on to Old Town. Linda Cunha, do you have anything you'd like to share about Old Town?
There. Yeah, we have some concerns always about preserving the character and the historical aspect of the Old Town area. And there's a big project going on right now with redevelopment of the site of the former old Caltrans building. There's a park going in there, and it's going to offer some educational exhibits and more open areas for people to come and enjoy. One thing that we have issues with is obviously homeless at the transit center right there for the trolley, and also traffic on Taylor Street. People use that as a thoroughfare to get to Interstate 8.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I would like to see taken into consideration on how to lessen traffic in that particular area. And then also, I'd like to see the needs of seniors and those with disabilities addressed a little bit more. Not everyone is able to ride a bike or walk for miles on end. It's just something that I would like to see considered. There's also a couple of folks on that are with the Old Town Planning Group, Alejandra and Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to add anything?
No, thank you. Now we're watching this for information. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. And for now, that'll do it from my end.
Thank you very much, Linda. Okay, Uptown, Brer.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for putting this on tonight. That was nice to get an update. Uptown's got a lot of really exciting things going on. Nothing in the immediate future, but we are currently working on the Hillcrest Focus Plan Amendment, which is a partial update to our community plan, which is going to be specifying some new things for Hillcrest from Park Boulevard down to the urban Hillcrest core. This is including housing, mobility, and urban elements. The medical complex, which is the UCSD and Sharp hospitals, just east of Mission Hills, are both undergoing major redevelopments to comply with seismic retrofitting required by the state of California. And we expect both of these campuses to add about another 20,000 workers that'll be coming into the Uptown area every day. Currently, we have the Uptown Bikeway project, which is moving right along. We've got the 4th and 5th Avenue protected bikeways that are connecting Hillcrest to downtown. And hopefully in the near future, we're going to see the Sandag Washington Street Bikeway project, which is going to be our primary connection from Uptown down to the central mobility hub. And you know, our residents have a lot of concerns about how we're going to make that connection, making it accessible for all ages and abilities, since that really is our only connection down to where this new facility is going to be. And that's it for the moment. I'm really looking forward to hearing more from you guys.
Great, thank you, Brer. Peninsula, I believe Brad, do you have anything to share for Peninsula?
Let's see, in terms of transportation, the only thing I can really think of right off the top of my head is that it hasn't been completed, but in terms of reconfiguring with paint the rest of West Point Loma Boulevard to give a connection from the Midway area to the beaches, to make it a little bit more seamless and have a protected bike lane there, buffered. Other than that, the community hasn't really taken a position on this. We have a pretty diverse group, certainly a lot of people that grew up car culture focused. And also all of this will cost a lot of money, but there are also those of us that are on the planning board that have traveled and ridden wonderful transportation systems throughout the world. So this is, at least personally, this is from the plans that I reviewed earlier today. It's very encouraging and exciting, and thank you so much for all the thoughtful work that you've been putting into this. It's something that's really bothered me in my travels, that when you come home, it's just, you feel like you've gone back in time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad. Andrea, how about Ocean Beach?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having this. I love hearing, what all the other communities are doing. And in Ocean Beach, we are firmly committed to the same goal that Sandag is, of getting people out of their cars and walking and biking or, skateboarding around the communities as much as possible. So a lot of our focus in the past few years has been, traffic calming measures along our most used bike routes, and then connecting the beach to our parks, and then along the bay trails and connecting it to the other beach communities. So just making sure that, Ocean Beach is as bikeable and walkable as possible, and reducing the speeds which cars travel through our neighborhood is our main concern.
Great. Okay, now we move out of communities and into organizations. So Andy, did you want to share anything from the Bike Coalition?
Oh, certainly. And thank you for including us. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I like a lot of what I've been hearing from everybody with the overall goals. And thanks to Sandag for, prioritizing multimodal, clean, green, reduced GHG transportation alternatives to make these connections. And so for us, the importance of a built out bike network is really important. And I know we're making a lot of progress there. Breer mentioned Washington and some other things, but networks to get to the mobility hub from all places with the type of infrastructure that we need, which is what is largely behind the Sandag regional bike plans for protected, safe infrastructure, and making those connection points work to the hub. So really, I mean, and really, we've got a lot of momentum. The scenario we're in with the pandemic has really increased ridership to levels that we haven't really seen, and there's a lot of interest. And I think we have a lot of momentum to build out these networks for real purpose of getting people to the mobility hubs and beyond. And this central hub is really important. And the last thing I'll say is, I'm a longtime resident of Point Loma, and I've the connection there is, there's no lines drawn down here, but I think folks like the Navy and tourism in particular, to have safe options to get to the airport is really important, and there's a lot of that happens down here in the peninsula. So there's some of that that's personal, but from a bike riding standpoint, I think just build out this network and really expand it to make those safe routes to transit.
Great, thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Angeli, how about circulate?
Yeah, so a lot of what other people have said on the call is also what Circulate continues to advocate for. But first off, just thank you for inviting us. You have all just always been so helpful and responsive whenever we have questions on the 5 big moves or the Central Mobility Hub. And you all presented to us last month, and I thought that was a great presentation. So I really appreciate the communication that your team has constantly been doing throughout this entire process. But yeah, we are always concerned about, you know, the general connectivity, and as other people have mentioned on the call too, ensuring safe infrastructure. You know, the city of San Diego is halfway through their 10-year Vision Zero commitment. So, you know, as we have a new administration coming into, we want to continue advocating for safer streets and better infrastructure, as Andy previously mentioned. But yeah, just happy to be here, and thank you for continuing to communicate with us.
Thank you, Angeli. Okay, now let's shift over to Naval Base Point Loma. Captain and Muska, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I'll let Muska go first. Muska.
Sorry,
I
my
think you're
mute button
there.
was not working. Here we go. So I'm not gonna get into too much details because I feel like we have provided updates to the community on what the project is or what NAVWAR requirements are, and I can let my colleague Greg, who's here with us, talk about NAVWAR's requirement. But I will tell you where we are in the process. We're working currently on the draft EIS, and we are waiting for that analysis to be done. Of course, like everything else, COVID has impacted our schedules as well. And our team is working tirelessly to make sure that we have that draft EIS out to public as soon as that's possible. So we're working on that. And as soon as that's available, we will bring it out to the communities. But for the most part, we're just here to observe, understand community concerns, and be able to answer any questions you may have. Skipper, I'll send it back to you.
Okay, hey, thank you, Muska. I will tell you that while I've only been part of the project here for a few months and the commanding officer of Naval Base Point Loma for about 4 months now, I've been in the Navy for over 30 years. And this is the most exciting project that I've been witness to. And that includes my command tour when I was the commanding officer of a $3 billion nuclear powered warship, the USS Colorado, and seeing that ship come from the ground up, seeing it built from essentially nothing to being a seagoing vessel, seaworthy vessel, carrying 140 plus crew members underway on nuclear power. That was amazing tour, and amazing experience in my life. But you know, we were not the first. I was the first commanding officer of USS Colorado, but we were not the first Virginia class submarine. So not quite as exciting as the first time, but still pretty exciting for me. I'll tell you from my perspective that, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Naval Base Point Loma, but we're pretty large footprint, about 1,800 acres with 18,000 active duty civilians, reservists, contractors, 18,000 personnel working for Naval Base Point Loma in one capacity or another. And one of the largest components of that is, NAVWAR. They bring a lot to the community, as you probably already know if you've seen the SDMAC report from 2019, the amount of money that they bring to the area. And to what Muska was talking to with the EIS, or environmental impact statement, and they say 5 alternatives, I'll say 6, because the 6th alternative is the do nothing alternative, that no action, which I think personally is the worst alternative, is doing nothing, because these buildings are underutilized, the space is underutilized, and I think we could be more efficient in how we're doing business over there. And these buildings are literally falling apart at the pop rivets. These are old World War II, B-24 bomber buildings that have been around, for longer than me, if you can believe it, and I'm pretty old. longer than I have been here. And so we really need to do something to support Navor and their mission out there. And I will tell you that I don't have a full appreciation for the commute in San Diego and the traffic problem in San Diego, because I live right here at Point Loma. I have about a 4.5-minute commute, and that's walking, that's door to door. So I don't have the traffic problems that you do, but I do appreciate where you're coming from. I have had to live through that before. I've lived in metropolitan areas before. I've lived near Seattle, lived near Tampa, and I just came from, most recently, from Naples, Italy. So I can appreciate how important it is to have a smart plan to contend with what could potentially make the traffic pattern that much worse. And I'm here to attest on behalf of the EIS and what the Navy's doing. They are taking all that into consideration. They're looking at all the different options, looking at all the different possible ways that they can mitigate the increase in traffic patterns. And you know, I know there's some that will say that the traffic's going to go up by X amount, and I don't know. Based on what you know, Kristen just presented there, and we've seen, you know, it looks like it's going to make traffic better, not necessarily worse. Even if you're bringing more people to the area, which seems like a good thing to me. If you're bringing more people to the area, that's more money. That's you know, more money to small businesses. If people come to the area to shop and buy things, whether it's cars or, you know, a new purse or a new jacket or whatever, I think it's good for the community. It's good for all of us. At the end of the day, what the Navy's looking for is a new facility for Navor. And the first alternative, you'll hear Navy recapitalization, basically going with federal funding and Congress approved funding to go it alone. I think personally, I think that's a bad idea. I don't know which way the Navy's going to go with this. It's still under review. But in my opinion, the first option and the last option, either going it alone or doing nothing, are probably the two worst options, because one, going alone, it's a little cost prohibitive. It's not the best use of the Navy's money. If we can do something with a public-private venture and working with Sandag and the community and doing something that makes the entire area better, I would argue that recapitalization is not the best path forward. And just to kind of circle back on the traffic and their concerns, the environmental impact statement, they want the Navy and Senate, you know, we want community engagement. We want the community to be involved. And the EIS is not going to be ready for public consumption here for a little bit. You know, sometime hopefully early in 21. There's still some last minute hurdles we're trying to get over and you know, hammer out some details. But I will tell you that the Navy and Sandag absolutely want community engagement and want community support. They want to go this as quickly as possible and get Navor at the end of the day, you know, get them the facility and the resources that they need. So I'll pause there. Greg, did you have anything you want to add to tag along there? You know, don't tell us anything too secret. We don't have to kill everybody in the Zoom room here. So keep it at the unclassed level there, Greg.
Well, we've tracked the GPS coordinates of each of these IP contacts, so we should be able to take everybody out.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Thanks.
No, you know, as everybody knows here, Navor's, you know, 5,000 federal employees, 5,000 contractor employees are part of your community. We're 97% civilian, 3% military active duty to keep us fresh from the fleet. But we're as concerned and leaning forward into the issues as much as the rest of the community. We like an easy commute. We like easy transportation. We want to be able to get to the airport. And we surely want to do that with the good blessings of our colleagues and partners across this entire phone call. So we appreciate everybody's involvement in this effort. Obviously, we have a mission imperative, and that is to get new facilities, modernize and safe and secure facilities to do our mission, to keep our footprint here in San Diego for the long term. And as we grow with the increasing emphasis on cybersecurity and cyber warfare, to make sure that stays here in San Diego, along with the budget that comes along with it. But it's an exciting project. I've done this project for since its beginning back in 2016, and I couldn't be more pleased with the cooperation that we're getting across the community, across the state, from the governor's office, the mayor's office, Sandag, and back, of course, to the halls of the Pentagon, all up and down through each of the different layers of command. So it's an exciting time, and we're all here working with you all to make sure that the millions that we're spending on planning this gets it right. We want to make sure that what we come up with and what we all agree to through the public vetting process gets San Diego what it needs and gets the Navy what it needs. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Greg and Captain and Muska. And our final update is from Brookfield. So Zach and Jessica.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So all I can say is I logged in because I thought we were going to get top secret info on this call. So what could I say? Just a quick intro to who we
Those
are.
Live satellite connections behind me. Those are all classified.
There we go. There's the piece. Thanks again for inviting us. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here and to contribute and participate in this process. So thanks again. Just a quick intro of who we are. We're Brookfield Properties, and we own, we operate, and we develop real estate. We invest in communities, and we build sustainable and inspiring places. We've been in San Diego for over 40 years, and I'm sitting here in my house in Point Loma. I've been in Point Loma for over 15 years, so it's meaningful to be a part of this process. We're partnered with ASM Global to master, develop, and revitalize the San Diego sports arena site. We were picked by the city to do that after a competitive RFP process in August. And then we worked with a number of the folks that are on this call towards the passage of Measure E in the recent general election. So it's great to be here. Today, regarding the site, we're in discussions with the city as the new administration takes office. We're also speaking with the community, like Jessica's community advisory board that a few of you are on. And what that really means is for the folks that haven't yet been contacted by Jessica, you probably will be soon. So we're excited to talk to everybody who's on this call as well. We're also doing some activities on the site in terms of basic recon, in terms of learning more about what's there. So what's our opportunity here, just in a nutshell? I'm kind of a history buff, and so I go back to this pamphlet that was created for the city back in the 1970s called Temporary Paradise. And it's amazing how much of that and what was written for that still holds true today. And there's this quote that said, "The city's magnificent site, for which its citizens have strong affection, is still intact, but may be losing its best qualities." And I say that actually out of hope, not out of despair, that we have this incredible opportunity as we look at some of these significant projects in this area and in this district, combined with a bipartisan citizens initiative here for passing Measure E, to really make a difference in this area, in this city, and in this region with what we do. And that's going to happen by us all talking in exactly the way that we are, and not if we all think within our respective property lines. So we're really looking forward to this. And again, thanks for inviting us.
Thank you so much. All that input was really valuable, and it's nice to see just how much there is going on. And it can, I think, sometimes seem overwhelming, but like you just said, Zach, you know, we have a lot of really incredible opportunities. So we would like to move now into, I'm going to introduce Rachel Kennedy, who is the project manager for the Central Mobility Hub and Connections Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. So Rachel, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kristen. And thanks to all of you being here tonight. And it was very interesting and informative to hear your updates on your plans. I wanted to provide a little bit of background information on the Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan program. So in September of last year, the Sandag Board of Directors approved $40 million to develop 12 of what we call CMCPs, or these type of corridor plans, over the next 5 years. And this map that you see on the slide here shows the 5 corridor plans that are currently under development, which includes the Central Mobility Hub and Connections Corridor Plan, shown in blue. And so these corridor plans assess current and potential future transportation conditions within the study areas, and then they develop transportation solutions to improve travel options for people who are traveling by transit, on the highways, local roadways, biking, walking, goods movement, and the technologies that are needed to help bring all these modes together to work efficiently. And these corridor plans are also required to be competitive for some types of state funding. So Sandig is being proactive in developing these plans so that we can help to bring more state and federal dollars back to our region to build projects. If we go to the next slide, we can see on this map here, this shows the Central Mobility Hub and Connections corridor plan area. So we have kind of two areas that we're looking at. You can see in the dark blue, this is our study focus area that contains the Navy's Old Town campus, the Midway community, the airport, and downtown San Diego. And this is the area that we anticipate focusing most of the transportation solutions. But here you can also see on this map, we have some areas shown in light blue, and these are our areas of influence. We recognize that it's very important not only just to focus within the areas in the dark blue, but understanding how people are traveling to and from these areas will also be a focus of our efforts. If you go to the next slide. Here on this map, we have been taking a look at existing conditions and existing data and identified a number of key intersections, touch points within the community, but we know there are other areas of concern and opportunity. And so we have some questions later in the presentation where we're going to be looking for specific input from you on some of the areas that you want to make sure that we focus on within our upcoming work. And next slide, please. So on this slide here, you can see some of our upcoming milestones and timelines for developing this corridor plan. We're still fairly early in our process. This fall and winter, we're going to be looking to develop 3 Central Mobility Hub alternatives. That's part of the scope of this corridor plan as well. 2 of those concepts will be developed at the Navy Old Town campus, and another will be developed at the Intermodal Transportation Center. And I'll show a map highlighting those 2 areas in just a moment. We're happy to be here with all of you tonight at this community roundtable, and then we are planning a public workshop in mid-January where we are looking to bring some draft Central Mobility Hub concepts for all of you and the larger community to review and comment on and give us feedback that we can then incorporate into some revised concepts in early 2021. In the spring timeframe, we will be looking to have another community roundtable as well as an additional public workshop. And those 2 events will focus on the transportation solutions that we'll be looking to develop with your assistance. We are looking to have a draft corridor report prepared in the May timeframe, putting that out for community review and comment, and then looking to finalize that final report in the summer of next year. Next slide. So as part of our kind of early work in developing the plan, we have been working with our team to take a look at all of the community plan updates and documents that have been prepared by other agencies. We know that a number of your communities have worked in recent years to update your community plans, and a lot of really good work and thought about the future of your communities, how people are going to move around is contained in those plans, and we want to be a partner with you on those. We have also been taking a look at the plans that were developed by the airport and the port and the plans that they have for their facilities as well, and taking all of those into account. Next slide. And then this slide here shows the two locations that we're looking at Central Mobility Hub concepts for within this corridor study. So we're looking to develop two concepts at the Navy Old Town campus, and then one concept at the Intermodal Transit Center. For those of you a little bit less familiar with that site, as Sharon mentioned earlier, it's between I-5 and Pacific Highway and just south of Washington Street. So you can see that on the right-hand side. And then with that, I'd like to turn it over to Steve Scibola, who is our project manager leading our consultant team who's helping us with this effort. He's with the IBI group and will share some of the different placemaking and planning concepts that we are having in mind as we start to develop these Central Mobility Hub concepts. Steve?
Thanks, Rachel, and hello again, everybody. So for tonight, we are looking at the two sites, as Rachel said. I'm going to be focusing on the Old Town campus site as being, I think everyone is interested in both sites, but I think this one is a little more central and perhaps of greater interest. So one of the things we learned in studying, what makes facilities like these successful around the world is that the most successful ones aren't just these sort of sterile, places where people just come by one mode and switch onto a different mode and leave. The most successful facilities like this become not only a part of the community, but often they become the heart of the community. They really, kind of anchor the community and just bring a lot of new people and, as someone said, a lot of money to the area. So one of our key challenges is as we're laying out the different bits and pieces of the Central Mobility Hub, where do the train platforms go, where does the people mover go, we're always conscious of, well, where are we and how do we make this facility one that seamlessly blends into the neighborhood? And this map, of course, to everyone here, there's no surprises here, but we always look back on it and make sure we totally understand our context with everything that's going on in the area. Old Town, of course, is Old Town and will always be there. But we've got we've got the new development in sports arena. We've got the new Navy facility, which will be across the street. We've got ongoing development of Dutch Flats and the Hancock Transit Corridor. So. And all of this is, very walkable, very close. Obviously we have some barriers, challenges to deal with the 5 freeway, but we really want to make sure that we're always conscious of our surroundings as we start to lay things out. So next slide. So just a further elaboration, these are some of the principles that are in the front of our minds as we're starting to lay out concepts. The first is, making sure we have good, clear pedestrian, bicycle paths and new mobility paths into the surrounding neighborhoods, the current and future neighborhoods on both sides, into Old Town, into the Midway community. Obviously the site will front on Pacific Highway. It's going to be the front door. And we really want to look at opportunities to sort of carry on where the Midway community plan left off, which is looking to sort of reinvent that corridor as, yes, it will still carry and needs to carry a fair amount of traffic, but becoming a much more multimodal street, bike friendly, ped friendly, and really acting as more of an urban street, we feel, and how can we best take care of that or contribute to that as part of this project. Number 3 is really then starting to dive down to, okay, well, where should those connections be? And, kind of respecting the grid of streets that's there on both sides. And you'll see some more slides, but really starting to think about all the connections we want to make within the site and to the community. 4 is really, I mentioned laying out the different bits and pieces of platforms and vertical circulation and ticketing and all that stuff. Really wanting to make sure that they're thoughtfully laid out so that they work well from a user's point of view, that people can navigate the site very easily, but are also very open, very accessible to the community. So what starts to emerge is this thought of the Central Mobility Hub being kind of the heart, but a heart needs, as we all know, good arteries in order to work. And so those, you can't have a heart without arteries. It's all going to work together. And last but not least is then making sure that what we do at the Central Mobility Hub then integrates very seamlessly with the new development that's going to go on on the same side of the street and across the street. So as we always do when we start to look at this, we look at inspirations from other places, you know, what's worked well. And we've looked at cases all over the world, but there's actually a pretty good one that's relatively in our backyard, and that's Denver Union Station. Now, we don't look to it for our architectural inspiration. This was a historic station that was, you know, repurposed and reused. But what we look to it for is how there are a huge number of transportation modes that are converging here. You've got a huge bus facility, you've got light rail, you've got commuter rail, and yet it's just a seamless part of downtown where, you know, that top left picture, you just kind of walk across the street. On one side is a very nice bookstore, walk across the street, and you have all these transportation elements at your fingertips. So it's very woven in. And even things like, you know, that bus facility, by putting it underground and decking over it with essentially an open plaza and a park with a lot of skylights. These are things that work very well there. So it is a transportation facility, but it's just part of the neighborhood. So that's a strong inspiration for us. So keeping those thoughts in mind, we start to look at the site, and you know, next month we'll start to, we're still working on the actual Central Mobility Hub features itself, but right now we've sort of dashed it in as kind of living in the center of the site, you know, roughly between Enterprise and Kurtz. That seems to be kind of the sweet spot for where it wants to live. And so we start to look at what's around it, and we see that, of course, as everyone knows, there's a good grid system of roads, which is all the rage now. It's back in fashion in terms of getting bikes and pedestrians and cars even. A grid is a very efficient way to do that, and we have one on both sides. You know, obviously it's taken some dings over the years when the 5 freeway went in, but there's good bones, as the architects like to say. And so we go on to the next slide. When we saw that block pattern, it kind of reminded us of another place that we near and dear to our hearts and near to us, which is Portland. Portland uses these 200 by 200 foot blocks, so very, very compact blocks. They're 230 feet if you include the sidewalks. But you know, all that development that you see in that bottom right picture, that all lives within the framework of these very efficient blocks. So when we looked at that model, and we can go on to the next slide, and kind of said, well, you know, let's get a sense of scale. What does that look like? So here are the Portland blocks kind of laid out on the site. And now we're not saying this is the way the development has to be, because that's going to be up to the Navy as the owner and the future development partners. But just as a way of just understanding how the site might work with the Central Mobility Hub in the middle and development on both sides, by perhaps using blocks that are not unlike this, we can start to sort of visually and physically kind of restitch the grid on both sides. And the Central Mobility Hub can perhaps act as an extension of that grid. You can kind of see, you know, if you picture Kurtz coming in onto the site, and the same with Enterprise, you know, they can reconnect, as I'm sure they once did at one point. So this is basically the sort of overall framework that we're thinking about in terms of how the Central Mobility Hub will relate to the transportation uses, but also the development on site and the development, you know, the existing and future development across the street. If we go to the final slide, you just start to see, again, just, you know, using those blocks, we can kind of see these connections. Now, you know, this doesn't mean necessarily that we will have a physical connection across the 5 freeway at each and every one of these locations. You know, that may not be doable or even desirable in some cases, but there's different kinds of connections. We could have physical, but we could also have visual or even aspirational connections where we maintain view corridors so that for people walking around on the site, they do feel connected to both sides. So this is where we are today, and just to give you a sense of, you know, how we're evolving this plan, so that when you see the sample layouts next month, you'll kind of get a sense for the context. And really at this point, I will turn it back to Kristen, because we really want to get into the sort of open discussion of how can the site best serve the community, and how can we make sure that it's considered part of the community.
Great, thank you, Steve and Rachel. That was a great presentation, lots of information. We'd like to use the rest of the time that we have here for hearing from you. And we have a couple, we're going to go back to our phones and use the Mentimeter app one more time to get some, hopefully some visual feedback. This is going to be a word cloud. And what we want to hear on this first one are, what are the opportunities that you see from these projects, and what could those offer the community? And I think that the app is set up so you can enter either 3 just words, or a couple words, and then you'll see stuff popping up, and then maybe we use that input that comes from the word cloud to see other things that you want to chat about before we move on to the next activity. So I'll give you a couple minutes there.
Sorry, Kristen, can you repost the Menti or let me know how to access that again?
Actually, if you look at the top of this slide, you can go to Menti.
The QR code's still there. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and then that 8271202.
Thank you.
Is everybody just about done? Oh, looks like we still have a few more coming in. Okay, just a couple more seconds and then we will jump into a discussion. Okay, is everybody done? We can keep it up, and if there's more that come in while we're talking, we can see how it changes. I think it's kind of interesting on here that the 2 largest words here, which means that lots of people put them in there, are connectivity and traffic, which seem to be kind of 2 sides of the same coin. One being able to help the other. But I want to turn it over to you if there's anything in here that somebody wants to expand on. You can either raise your hand or put something in the chat box, and I can call on you to talk, to expand upon any of these things that you have put into the word cloud. No hands raised so far. Let me. Kathy.
Thank you, Kristen. Obviously I've got a very strong point of view on this. I don't think anybody that has heard me comment on this before would be surprised. What I haven't heard in any of this is how Sandag, how any of this development is going to improve and not negatively impact traffic in the Midway corridor. that I mean, one of the biggest concerns that we have, that we hear all the time against redevelopment and revitalization of our community, are the surrounding communities who are complaining how difficult it is to get through Midway now to get where they're going. And what I'm not hearing that addressed at all here. I'm hearing this is great and we can connect from, you know, outlying areas in here, but I don't know if what impact this is going to have on traffic in and around Midway. I am not interested in having a parking lot for Midway and having Midway turned into a parking lot because it might be convenient for these activities.
Okay. Thanks,
I also
Kathy.
don't, I'm one more point. I haven't seen anything. One of the priorities and one of the #1 priorities that the community has expressed and was specifically put in the plan, in the community plan update, was the improvement and completion of the I-8, I-5 missing moves. And that hasn't even been mentioned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rachel or Steve, is there anything that you want to add to Kathy's comments, or do we just want to take input right now, or do you want to share anything to address any of the things that she said?
I just wanted to let Kathy know that I've noted both of those elements, and those are some things that we're going to be exploring as we look at the transportation solutions, which are for our larger study area, not only for the Naval or ITC sites. So we are looking at transportation on local roadways, on the freeway, connection to the freeway as part of the effort.
And actually, I wouldn't mind a little bit of clarification, Kathy, on your comment about turning, you know, Midway into a parking lot, which obviously you want to avoid. But by that, do you mean a parking lot because it's going to be gridlock, or literally a parking lot that people will park in the neighborhood in order to access the facility? Or both?
Both.
Okay.
I'm concerned. I mean, there's been no explanation of is there going to be a parking lot at the Central Mobility Hub? Are people going to be driving to get there in order to get on the people mover? Or is this going to be so? We don't know what we haven't seen your plans. We don't know, you know, what you're anticipating, but I'm extremely concerned about an increase in traffic, an increase in parking that is coming into the community to then access the hub. And I guess the other question, as long as I've got the floor again, is why you're not looking at the other site seriously, because I think the other site is much closer to the airport and much more central, and they've got a bunch of property that desperately needs redevelopment also. So, but everybody seems to be giving that lip service.
Hey, Kristen, this is Ken Franklin here. Do you mind if I chime in on this?
Sure, go ahead, Captain Franklin.
I'm going to jump on this grenade a little bit. Hey, Kathy, I think you got a great question, and I think we talked about this at one of the last community planning groups. And I will tell you that having lived a lot of my life in the state of Connecticut, you don't see people driving to Grand Central Station to park their car in New York and then go see the Statue of Liberty or go see a Broadway show. They'll drop their car off in Greenwich, and then they'll take the train and commute in because it's easier. And so I know that you're not getting a lot of answers today, but really I think this all kind of hinges on the environmental impact statement and what comes out of that. which way we end up going, with or without high density, with or without the internodal transit hub, with or without a public-private venture, going it alone. There's, like I said earlier, there's 6 different options here. And so that's probably why you're not getting a whole lot of detail right now, because no decision's been made. I think once they hammer out the decision that they want to make, hey, this is the path that we want to go forward, I promise you that people a lot smarter than I am, and I am a nuclear engineer, don't get me wrong, but I'm not this kind of an engineer. I'm not that kind of smart. There are people a lot smarter than me that are looking at this, and they're looking at it really hard because they validated your concern. Your concern is absolutely valid. So no one's saying you're wrong. And I will tell you, I guarantee you that there are people looking at it, they're analyzing it, and they're going to come up with the best possible solution to go forward. And at the end of the day, don't take my word for it, because I can't promise you one thing or another. I have no idea which way the Navy's going to go, but I know that they're going to do everything they can to make it the best possible solution for the community. And they're absolutely taking your concern that because it's not just Kathy Kenton's concern that traffic is going to be bad and San Diego is going to become a huge parking lot. It's not your concern, it's the community's concern. And the Navy and SANDAG absolutely want to take that into consideration before they move forward. And that all goes into feeds into the environmental impact statement. I know it sounds like bunny rabbits and rainbows and bees and birds and all that when we talk environmental impact statement, but it includes much more than just the birds and the bees. It's everything. It's pollution and transportation, and how's it going to affect the way people walk, and how is it going to affect the sight lines for the people that overlook the bay and things like that. It takes all that into account. It's a huge environmental impact statement. It's been going on for months, as you know, and so I think they're really close. They're close to making a combined statement that's going to be ready for public consumption here in the near future. I can't tell you exactly when, but hopefully early next year, 2021. I hope that helps, Kathy. I know it's not an answer to your concerns, but I think we're close to getting closer, if that makes sense. That we're close to having the environmental impact statement released to the public, and that means we're closer to making the decision. No decision's been made. No, the Navy's not leaning one way or the other necessarily, but I think once we get the environmental impact statement and take the community's feedback into consideration, and then once the Navy makes a decision, but then we can kind of go from there. But I know you mentioned this at the last community planning group meeting that, hey, are we going to get a vote, or are we just going to get this, rammed down our throats and be a tough pill to swallow? I promise you that the Navy's absolutely going to want and SANDAG as well is going to want the community's inputs on this, because nobody wants a bunch of, angry civilians outside with torches and pitchforks, asking for Captain Ken Franklin's head on a pike. Nobody wants that. It's me especially. Well, maybe my wife especially, but you get the idea. I think we definitely want to make everybody happy, and we want to reach nirvana and compromise and meet somewhere in the middle. So hopefully that helps, and I'll get off my soapbox now.
So I think that's important input, Captain Franklin. And I mean, one of the things with respect to the SANDAG projects is these are really at the very beginning of their processes. And Kathy, you mentioned, that the ITC, it doesn't seem like we're giving consideration, but that is going to be an alternative that is seriously looked at as well. And we don't have a specific alternative chosen yet. There's also going to be additional environmental done once once we do know which direction we're going to be going. There will be an environmental process that looks at traffic and looks at all the environmental impacts as well for the Central Mobility Hub. And that, I think we're looking at that spring-ish, although I don't know exact dates, but it's starting that next year. Brer, you had your hand up, and then after that, DK.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. At the beginning of the presentation, you had mentioned urban air mobility, and I was wondering if you could expand on the potential of this site becoming a vertiport, and what sort of numbers you're looking at there, and what you envision as its aerial connections being.
Okay. Rachel or Sharon, who do you think would be the best one to address that?
Can you ask the question again?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
So at the beginning of your presentation, someone had mentioned the potential for urban air mobility. And I'm interested in if this is actually going to be a future vertiport and what sort of overhead traffic numbers you might imagine, what connections around the city you were thinking of, and also if this is something that's going to be included in the EIS and EIR.
I can address that question for you. So what we want to make sure that we do is that we don't preclude that as a potential option. So we will be making sure that there's some bare space at the top of the facility to be able to incorporate the future development of an urban airport. However, you know, there's a long way to go before we're there. And we're also within the flight path for the airport. So there's issues associated with that. So it is not my expectation that we will be including that as a project feature. However, we will be providing a space for landing so that it is not precluded for future development. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. I did want to speak to a couple other issues, but I'm going to let people get through the people who had their hands raised first, and then I'll come back.
Okay, so next we had DK and then Andrea.
Yeah, hi, thanks for taking the question. You know, I sort of raised my hand while Kathy was still in flow, sort of just piggybacking off that question that I think she's really truly getting at to a certain degree. You know, I obviously appreciate all of the outreach and the time that everyone's spending here. It's 6:30 on an evening, but if now is not the point in time at which we can get some level of clarity or certainty, on one hand, the question is, when does that specifically come? I sort of answer that somewhat. But also, when it comes to like this specific group, and as I look around, the Zoom room, you see the various different sort of stakeholders and the organizations that we represent. I guess I'm just trying to get a better sense for what is it specifically that you're trying to get out of this group here, and how does that even get incorporated? Because every time there's a question that gets asked, it seems as though the answer is, oh, we're early or we haven't committed to this. And so I guess I'm trying to get a sense for how you mean to incorporate the feedback that we're here to give, if it's still such an early stage, because I'd like to be able to give you good feedback, but just sort of at a loss at the moment.
No, I appreciate that comment. The purpose of us wanting to get together is really to open a dialogue and develop relationships with the community leaders who are going to be integral to this planning process. And this isn't just a one and done meeting and then we move on. We want to keep this dialogue open. We want to make sure that the community understands what the planning process is and what information is available. But we also want to be hearing from you on your community concerns, where you think areas of opportunity are, how this project might be able to integrate with your community plans, those kinds of things, so that while we are early in the planning process, those kinds of inputs can be used by the planning team and they can be aware of them while they're developing plans. Does anybody else from Sandag or the consultant team want to add to that?
Kathy, tried to say Kristen and DK and Kathy came out. Kristen, I'll just piggyback on that and DK, speak to your point that there are going to be a lot of opportunities for input from this point forth. So, a lot of what we're trying to do now is really just start that conversation, like Kristen said. And a big part of this too is, we're going to be holding our public workshop for the comprehensive multimodal corridor plan for this study area in January. And this conversation, the notes that we're taking are really going to help us determine what it is that the community is most concerned with and most interested in, so that we can frame that workshop accordingly. So, for my purposes, working with the community, I will tell you that this is invaluable. I'm so thankful to all of you for being here. In terms of how these comments will be incorporated into the plans themselves, of course, there are going to be a lot of factors that come into play. We're so early on that, it's hard for us to say, with certainty what will and will not be included. But again, this allows us to think about what we need to consider moving forward. But if it sounds like we're non-committal at this point, or we're not, taking any of this to heart, that's really what it is that this is all still so early. But assure you, we it's going to prove very beneficial for us.
Yeah, no, I certainly appreciate that, and I hope I didn't come across as feeling as though this wasn't a good use of anyone's time. This is great, and I'm honored to be here. One thing that I do sort of bring into this conversation, not just from the community planning group standpoint, but also just through what I do at work. The city of San Diego has a number of different stormwater infrastructure needs that I know will be of high issue in this next electoral cycle as they look to sort of address that and find a funding mechanism for that. So one thing that I'd like to at least put on the radar, if I'm understanding the response to my question, that you should all be aware of if you're not already, which I suspect you may be, is just integrating whatever planning efforts you have with the city of San Diego and the county and whatever the various different jurisdictions are regarding some of the various different sort of just overarching needs, I'd say, of the space and the place and the part of the city where this project lives.
Great. Thank you, DK.
Thank you.
We had Andrea and Brad had their hand up, and then Sharon, you also wanted to add a few more. And then I think we need to move on to our next word cloud, although some are kind of merging on the discussion of this, but. So Andrea?
Yeah, hi. So my question is kind of piggybacking off the economic development opportunities. Is SANDAG looking to actively partner with any tech industries or the universities in San Diego to actually invest and possibly develop new mobility transportation technology, or look at ways we can really leverage those partnerships as well to push the region further?
Is that something, maybe Colleen, would that be a question for you? Or Sharon?
So the short answer is yes. We have certainly had conversations. We've been, so there's a variety of autonomous vehicle organizations that have reached out to us. Some of the tunneling with the Boring Company has reached out to us. We haven't made any, we're not actively moving forward on any potential initiatives. But we are certainly open to having conversations with anybody who is interested in executing some innovative technologies. Towards that end, SANDAG recently, within the last year, has issued a public-private partnership bench, and we actually have 36 different firms that can provide us advising on potential public-private partnerships. And so SANDAG is open to innovate and welcome, we would welcome having any of those conversations. And but there isn't any definitive plans yet with any particular organization. Does that address your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Great. So if you know anybody who wants to do business with us, let us know.
Yeah, as soon as I figure out who invented teleportation, I'll send them.
Well, we're going to do the next best thing.
Okay, we'll move on to Brad. You had your hand up, and then after that, we should move on to our next word cloud activity.
Thank you so much. I guess I wanted to follow up a little bit on what Kathy had been talking about, in that, I mean, her community already is a parking lot. So, and the Peninsula community, their big fear of both, they've, Point Loma and both the Midway area did not vote for Measure E. I think because of fear of traffic congestion and getting stuck in traffic for another 5 minutes. Anyway, So I was just in that, and then she had mentioned the intermodal. Now, regarding the intermodal, it would appear, and does this have any, I mean, the Navy would not be involved in that, and that would only be on the region, right? Isn't that the case with the intermodal plan?
With the Central Mobility Hub plan?
Well, you know, that area down right across from where Jim's area used to be, where the car rental area
Oh,
is.
the Intermodal Transit Center.
Right,
So,
right. That plan, I guess number 2, does not involve the Navy, right? So, I mean, there is an advantage to having the mobility plan, the existing Naval site, because of the Navy's collaboration. I mean,
Sharon,
is
do you
that?
want to take that one?
Yeah, and actually, this is a great opportunity. I just wanted to address a couple of items that have come up. I would just want to make sure there's a clear understanding. I know it's confusing. It's confusing to me, and I'm in it every day. But you know, the Navy's project is looking at redevelopment of the Navy's Old Town campus, and they will carve out a space for a transit center. And they have a consideration of mixed use development, but that is separate. And the environmental document that's being prepared by the Navy for that project is separate than what Sandag would do. So Sandag would take that carve out if it were to be advanced at that location and create a central mobility hub there. So I just want to make sure there's a clear understanding between the Navy's project and then Sandag's project. Sandag's project is to develop a central mobility hub. And while it is true that the Navy will not be looking at the intermodal transit site as a potential alternative, because their project is not a transit center, their project is redevelopment of Navy facilities. So when Sandag comes along, we can and must identify, address in our environmental clearance, the intermodal transit center and the Navy site. And I just want to assure Kathy that we are providing, you know, equal attention. It was the first location that the comprehensive multimodal corridor plan team looked at is the Central Mobility Hub site, or I'm sorry, the site at the Navy's Old Town campus. But they will be providing an equal level of analysis. I guess it's one less alternative, but we're going to be looking at the intermodal transit center site, you know, with the same level of scrutiny. And I also wanted to speak about parking. We will not be adding parking facilities to the Central Mobility Hub wherever it is located. Because that's not the point of a central mobility hub. We're trying to get people out of their cars, not park at a transit center and then get on transit. That's, you know, it's kind of counterintuitive. And then the final issue I wanted to address, especially with regard to your concerns, Kathy, is that yes, traffic is a very big concern, and we are starting to do some of the background studies. We're working with Caltrans. Nicola Bernard is on the phone call with me, and she and I are working closely on looking at the corridor between I-8 and Grape Street. We have initiated a project study report for that corridor to look at potential freeway improvements. But what's so interesting and exciting about this project is everything's interconnected. You know, there's the freeway, there's the Navy, we're working with the city, we're working with the port, we're working with the airport, we're working with MTS and North County Transit District. So what makes this project so interesting is that there are all these different features that we need to weave together to address traffic. We need to address transportation, and it's very complicated, which is why no one has done it before. But I think now is the time.
Thanks, Sharon. I was told that Greg had his hand up as well.
May I? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Brad.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. No, I just wanted to make the point that as community planning groups, I mean, we're participating here, but our groups, they move at a glacial pace. We can't really take a position. I mean, we can ask questions and things, but basically I'm just a representative for a body that is unfamiliar with this, may not be all that clued in on it. And for us to get this digested at a board level and be able to take a formal position, I mean, it's just, I appreciate you including, of course, the planning groups here, but it seems as though looking at your time frame, is moving much faster than a planning board. Planning boards typically move, and to have a representative here with a position, I mean, I can't imagine that a planning board, at least our planning board, I mean, we're dark this month, and we haven't had elections, and we're running out of people, and I mean, we have an interim group now, but I can't imagine us having a position before March. I mean, possibly if it was accelerated, they might be, but they'd all have to get up to speed. But anyway, I just want to let you know that time is marching on, and we walk very slowly.
Well, and at this stage, I think, it's too early for any sort of position, because we're coming to you while we're in the planning process and there haven't been any sort of alternatives presented. That will happen in the future, in the next several months. So I think there's going to be a number of touch points where we can reach out to your community group, provide you with information. People can participate in public workshops, things like that, as the information kind of coalesces into actual alternative plans instead of ideas, which is where we are right now. We're at a much more conceptual stage at this point, but as time goes on, it will become probably something more specific for people to react to.
So we're not really having any kind of input on any of the existing plans right now. It's just overview tonight, and we're not
Overview
getting into...
and for us to get to learn, what's going on and what's important in your communities.
Right.
So we are running shorter on time than I had thought. Gia, did you have a comment that somebody put into chat, or should we just move on to our next questions?
Yeah, well, you know what, let me really quickly, Brer, I noticed that you had typed a comment. So I'll read it aloud for the group if that's all right. And just let me know if this is something you'd like us to address or if it's more of an FYI. But that comment is, UCSD has previously mentioned a desire to connect their redevelopment project in Medical Complex to Old Town Transit via a light rail or other mass transit connection. Long-term bicycle and micromobility storage and parking facilities will be key for Uptown users.
Okay.
So Brer, would you, I'm not sure if that was directed as, something for us to discuss, or like I said, more of a note for the group.
Well, I should just sort of couch that by saying that, my Zoom habits are kind of rearing their head here, where in group chats like this, I'll often share comments or ideas as they relate to current conversation. So I hope those don't seem kind of out of context, but they were just responses to things you were saying while you were speaking. So
no, not out of context at all. And I think that we are going to be keeping the text record as well to make sure that we get all of the input that's coming out today. So given our time, we were going to do a second word cloud activity talking about concerns, but it seems like we have both talked about concerns and opportunities here. So in the interest of time, I think we're going to skip that one and go on to our final two questions that we wanted you to give some thought to. And I'm just going to throw both of these questions out here, and then we'd like to hear back from you on these. What do you see as the key priorities for your community as we develop these projects and plans? And how do you see the Central Mobility Hub and the Corridor Plan supporting your community plan? And how can we continue to work together to make sure they're complementary? So I know that's a lot to think about, but if anybody has any thoughts they'd like to share specific to your community or your community plan or your organizational mission or anything like that, we'd love to hear from you. And I can't physically see everybody here. So if there's somebody raising their hand physically, I can't see that. So we need you to raise your hand in the raise hand function or in the chat box.
And I'll just add, I think we have addressed some of this in our conversation. So, I don't want anyone to feel like they're forced to add on to anything that's already been said. But, if there's anything that's really, critical to your communities that hasn't already been discussed, please share it with us at this time. This is where, we want to make sure that we take all of this into consideration moving forward.
Okay, I don't see anybody raising hands.
Kristen, I think that Greg Geisen was raising his hand.
Oh,
I can't figure out how to raise my hand in the chat box.
And Greg, I'm not seeing your picture here, so.
Well, I look fantastic.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment to Brad to assure him this is really about the Central Mobility Hub and SANDAG's transit plans for the region. It's critically aligned with, in many ways, to the Navy's revitalization of Old Town campus, but also independent. The federal government, first time I've ever heard anybody say we move too fast. We've been doing this since 2016, when Kathy and I and DK and I first, or DK a little bit later, first started discussing this in the community. Our timeline right now, we started with our engagement with the community back in January, luckily before COVID, with our public engagement. We've since been using all those comments that you all turned in at that time to shape our studies. We're spending millions of dollars to look at all the possibilities of our alternatives and gathering with some of the top experts in the country, the impacts to what would be the effect of traffic, pollution, noise, flight lines, visual lines, etc., should we choose any of these alternatives. We'll come back to the public again with our draft EIS in the beginning of 21, first quarter of 21, and we're going to come back and say, okay, this is what we've studied based on your input, and what you said back in a year ago. It's taken us this long to get all the data together because he's got smart people with big brains. And we will then present that to the public, and we will then ask you again for your input. And that will come back to us 45 days of time for you to analyze it, look at it, think about it, ask questions. And we will take those inputs and we will again analyze that input before we get to a final EIS at the end of 21. We will then make a record of decision based on that final EIS, probably at the end of 21, could be into 22. And from that, SANDAG will have a possibility of an option based on what the public says. The Navy is looking for the public to tell us, do you want this redevelopment with or without a transit hub, at high density or low density? Each of those options have different benefits. So the public will be involved throughout this process. At the end of the day, this 70 acres is public land. It's federal land. And it does have a mission requirement that has to meet the Navy's needs for NAVWAR. But other than that, the benefit of the community is our primary goal. And so we have lots of opportunities across this process. And at the end of the process, I'll be interested to see if you think we went too fast.
Thanks, Greg. DK, you had your hand up?
Yeah, sort of just somewhat in response to Greg, but then also looking, at the questions that are here on the screen, when he's talking about priorities for the community, as we develop this concept and how do we see this thing sort of syncing and linking with the community plan. The Midway Community Plan definitely calls for, I think, what this project is also calling out, right? Pedestrian-oriented transit, all these sort of things. And so, very much like in concept, if nothing less, I want to be sure that I'm clear. I clearly and strongly support what we're talking about. I'd love to see that here in Midway at the NAVWAR site, personally. That's just my opinion. But when it comes down to, how we really sort of move forward, and I think this evening is a great example of that, right? We have to have these conversations, we have to get these stakeholders. But at the end of the day, I there does need to be that sort of back and forth because, Greg, you made a point. Yeah, we've been doing this for years, and this is not new to me. It's not new to Kathy. It's not new to a lot of the folks who are here. But it just feels as though at this specific moment, maybe it's the calm before the storm, before things go public. We're just sort of at this phase. So key priorities for me, like I said, would be to continue having these conversations and to include those of us who have these various different roles across the community. But then also, just trying to make sure that all of these things, particularly in the Midway district, we talked about the post office, we talked about the sports arena, and the third leg of the stool is, I think, that Naval site. I want to make sure that those three sort of large scale domino projects that are really going to, I think, catalyze redevelopment in this community, I want to make sure that those are all integrated and sort of fluent in their, I guess, just in their purpose and how they all work together. And so to the best of our ability, I think we're kind of doing it, we're just kind of going through it right now.
Thank you, DK. Kathy, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Kristen. So Greg, I just wanted to comment back on one thing that you said that probably isn't really a topic for tonight, but that was the 45-day comment period. And I will echo a little bit of Brad's concern about timing and, the fact that the plant, we have to, 45 days is not a lot of time for a planning group. I mean, maybe we can get in 2 meetings. We can certainly do special meetings, but in order to really, I'm assuming that the environmental impact report is going to be at a minimum several hundred pages. And for a community group to absorb it and formulate our responses and our questions and respond to that, 45 days is not a very long period of time. And I've been a part of this, not with the Navy, but with other environmental impact reports. And it really feels like, in a lot of cases, like the dates are actually scheduled so that you don't get a lot of input, you don't get a lot of feedback, and you don't get a lot of comments. You just, the deadlines are so tight. And I would just ask that when you're producing a document that I'm assuming is probably going to be close to 1,000 pages, when you're asking for a community to respond to it, and that community group is a group of volunteers, we are not, experts, we're not being paid to do this. It's a very short timeline. So if there's any possibility of extending that, I would certainly appreciate that.
Kathy, what do you think is a reasonable time?
Well, minimum 60, and I'd prefer 75.
All right, I'll take that back.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up, and we are coming up on the end of our time. We want to be respectful of everyone's time. Any last comments before we move on? Okay. So now my presentation is not advancing. There we go. So I'm going to turn it over to Gia from Sandag to talk about our next steps in our public outreach and get some input from you as well about noticing our public workshop. So Gia, go ahead.
Great, thank you. And I have to say, DK, you actually provided me with a perfect transition earlier. So if everyone could just remember what DK said, and then we'll flow on into this. Part of why we're doing this today is because, again, we wanted to have that conversation. We think that, you are all influential within your communities, you are active within your communities, and we want you to be able to lend your voices to this project. And I want to be able to maintain that conversation moving forward. So, I have been able to visit many of your groups. I hope to do that moving forward. And I'm actually here to kind of ask for your help as we, move forward, because we want your constituents, the members of your committees to get involved as well. So as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, we are going to be holding public workshops for the Central Mobility Hub and Connections Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. that plan is going to be the, the planning document that informs that Central Mobility Hub project. So again, this is a really key part of this process to ensure that that input is able to really, play the important role that it should. So our first workshop is going to take place on January 14th. And then our second will take place in the spring, and I'll be back in touch to, to let you know about that and remind you. And again, we'll hold another community roundtable. But, one of the things I was hoping to get some input on is, how we can increase attendance, or ensure that we have great attendance at that workshop. What do you need from me, from us, to make sure that your communities are aware of this opportunity? We're living in a new era right now with COVID. So I know that virtual divide makes things a bit harder. So if we have maybe 1 minute to dedicate to this now, I'd appreciate if you could, let me know what you might need from me so that we can promote this as best as we can, and then continue this dialogue moving forward. So I'll turn it over to the community. I'd love to hear your feedback on this.
No hands raised yet. Kathy.
Gia, do you have any idea what time or what block of time you're looking at for the 14th?
We do. So we're actually looking at holding that workshop from 4 to 6 p.m. So, hopefully it's something that, we'll be able to, it won't pose as many challenges with the traditional workday.
Okay, good. Well, I think that's important that you, it will help accommodate as many people as possible. Speaking for me, I can certainly promote it not only to, to our board members, but I have a growing list of interested folks that I will be happy to circulate any invitations to as well.
Great, and thank you for that, Kathy.
I mean,
Kathy,
I think,
what kind of notice would you like? What time frame would you need, like a digital flyer or something like that to send that out?
well, probably like 30 days so that we could send it more than once. And
Okay.
then I'd say if you can get any coverage, any news coverage, I'm sure you're already planning that, but if you could, if you can get any local coverage of the event in advance, obviously that would be helpful.
Great. Are there any other, I don't see any hands up, any other comments? While we wait for those hands to potentially raise, I'll just make my final point, which is that we are soon going to be launching a virtual engagement hub as well via the SANDAG website. So once we have that up and running, I'll be sure to send each of you the link. And this is going to be a way for you and your communities, your organizations to stay up to date on this effort. That's where we're going to have information on that upcoming workshop. And we're also going to be posting a lot of really great interactive features so that you can start to look at some of those design elements that Rachel and Steve shared earlier, and look at the project study area, and really start to leave comments. So, this is something that's going to, again, help ensure that we see what your communities want, what their concerns may be, and we can really make sure to incorporate that. So again, I will share that information with you once we have that up and running. And then Kristen, if you wouldn't mind progressing to the final slide. We also encourage you to, stay in touch throughout this process. Again, I'm going to do everything on my part to maintain this communication moving forward as well. But, in the meantime, I encourage you to reach out to us via email. You have my contact information, I would hope, at this point as well. And then, of course, we have other resources here for you to learn more, as well as Rachel Kennedy's information. Rachel is the project manager for the comprehensive multimodal corridor plan. So, feel free to reach out to any of us. Again, we thank you for your time this evening. This was a wonderful conversation. This is exactly what we were hoping to get out of tonight. So I hope that you also feel that this was a really worthwhile use of your time and a way for you to really learn more about what we're hoping to do at Sandag. So unless there are final questions or comments, I think we can adjourn. But Kristen, I'll turn it over to you just in case.
Thanks, Gia. I think that was about it. And we will be sure to reach out to everybody who was on this call with information about that workshop. So if you could, want to promote that through your own organizations and your own constituencies to help us increase participation. And so we look forward to hopefully all of you participating in that workshop, and also to a future conversation with you in this smaller group prior to the second workshop as well.